So, welcome to week 2 of the Darwin and Evolution MOOC. I hope you enjoyed week 1, looked at the timeline with Darwin. So now you should have a good idea about his life, how he came up with the theory, how he travelled around the world. So this week what we really want to do is go into some depth now, actually start thinking about evolution, so the mechanism of natural selection and evolutionary theory, but also how that evolutionary theory has developed since Darwin and the kinds of new innovations and new ideas that have contributed to the theory. So one of the first things that Darwin recognised and that contributed to his theory was that there is variation in nature. So for example here, Darwin was a beetle collector, and one of the things that he noted was that even amongst individuals of the same species there was a lot of variation between individuals. This is something that Wallace noticed as well, and they were both beetle collectors. Up until that time there'd been this idea, this typological species concept, whereby people thought each species was a given type, and so it always followed that type, and there was actually very little variation. Variation was seen to be something as unusual. So that was the first thing that Darwin noted. And he also noted that there was a lot of variation even in domestication, and in The Origin of Species he talks about this variation in domesticated animals. And so he used the example of pigeons. He became a pigeon breeder and he saw a huge amount of variation even in a simple animal like a pigeon, and he used this as the basis, as the first part of his argument in The Origin. So Darwin also realised that there was variation under nature, as he called it, so variation in nature. So although we recognise, for example, that in humans every individual is different, for some reason people hadn't recognise the idea that amongst animals there's also the same situation whereby all individuals are different. So for example, if we look at these collection of butterflies here, there's actually individual differences in the patterns on the wings, on the number of dots, on the colour, on the size of the individual. So seeing that variation in nature, Darwin realised that natural selection could act on that variation. So the other thing that Darwin realised was that there was this struggle for existence, as he termed it, in nature. After reading Malthus, who suggested that there was many more individuals that were produced than could survive, and Darwin had already seen this in the tropics. He'd seen the prodigious ability of nature to produce offspring. So Darwin realised then that if there was a lot of individuals produced, only some of those survived, then there would be some selection pressure. So what this meant was that for some individuals there would be a greater probability that they would survive and then produce fertile offspring, and nowadays we would say that those ones were selected for those particular individuals. So the other items we'll have this week include a timeline, an interactive timeline on evolution. So even before Darwin there were people thinking about evolution or ideas related to evolution, and also after Darwin. So part of that will be to look at the timeline and then maybe think about some of the modern evolutionary thinkers and what they contributed to evolutionary theory. Also, to illustrate the idea of adaptive radiation, we'll go back to the Galapagos and look at Darwin's finches and also the turtles on the Galapagos.